contrary to all the things you read in the paper, that old Jefferson was covered in water, it wasn't. Okay, now, I'll show you another map here in just a moment. When this map here was found down in Texas somewhere, years and years ago, the person, maybe the person who wrote this on here, thought it should have gone like this. And that, but it really, and you used to see it in books this way. This is the lots that were laid out by the two guys, Robert Weekly and Thomas Bedford. When they decided in 2003, I mean 1803, 200 years ago, almost 200 years ago, well 210 years ago now, but 200 years prior to our first hike, and I've got pictures in there, we had massive people on the first hike, coming to Jefferson. They found this and wrote this on here about the Jefferson, and it was finally brought to Tennessee. But really, if you're looking north, this is north here. This is north. It should go in the books like this. So I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to turn it over there. Okay. This is north. This is the over here where there's the boat ramp right down there for East Fork Recreation, and where that the road that goes to Walter Hill. It actually came right through this area, and it passed through Old Jefferson and over to West Fork. West Fork's over here somewhere, and these two surveyors, really big-time landowners. You know, they had money, I guess, and they just bought up land. They say, if we lay out this town, and they ultimately did with 100. That's the lot number 162 right there. And this was the town square right in this area right here, and you can even see some little buildings that were drawn here. And it's got over the years we've penciled in a lot of the names of people who actually owned those lots. Famous name people, famous to us. And so in this area right here, you've got to imagine the lake is almost full. I noticed this year, this morning's paper, the elevation of the lake dropped below 490 feet, which is throughout the summer it's been 490, 490. This up a little, one down. It goes like, but it dropped that. It's dropping a little bit now. So when we get to Old Jefferson and we get to the town square here where it used to be years ago, and walk down this main street going this way down here, you got to imagine what the river used to look like. Back when they had this was a riverboat town, and it was ideally located. This was a high spot right here. This was a high spot. Now, in my day, when we would have floods, you know, the East Fork comes out of Cannon County up on Short Mountain. If you've ever gone up that way, if you've gone up, any of you gone up there for the, you know, for the whiskey, the Short Mountain whiskey tour?
I know Short Mountain. I was there this week.
Yeah.
I was there this week. Not at the whiskey place.
It has become quite a tourist place. I mean, when I go up there, you know, I see somebody say, "Which way do you get to?" You know, and that I'll tell you, go up there. Okay, that's where Stones River starts, the East Fork, and the West Fork comes over in the southern part of the county. It comes back around, and it comes to by Nice's Mill. And so these two guys, they rushed in here and they bought up all this land they could, and parts of different land grants that you know, were made eligible to people who fought during the Revolutionary War. The higher your rank, you know, the more land you could actually claim. And so they actually went all the way. They bought it all the way to Nice's Mill up there. And when the trail goes that way, it goes all the way and bends around with the river. It goes all the way to Nice's Mill. These guys, when they go the other direction. And so they sold the people this idea back in 1803. That here's where the county seat would be, and sure enough, they sent it before the Congress in Knoxville. The state of Tennessee was formed in 1796, and so we'd already had several big counties here in the area. Davidson County was big. When you laid out Rutherford County, it went all the way to Alabama line, and so then along came Bedford County next, and then on over to the Lincoln County next, and they had their form of government. Part was the Cannon County came along in 1836, and they had to have their spot. So that's how the whole thing got started. And they sold these lots for $29 a lot. Okay. Well, you say, well, that's cheap. Well,
That's not a
back
lot.
then, the value, a greater part of the value that, you know, the wealth that people had was not in land so much, but it was in their slaves. Slaves were very, very expensive. Okay, I've got a little article. I'll put out there. It was a lady. It was a lady who was 103 years old. She lived down in Memphis. Her last name Keeble. On this side, as we walk in, we'll go by the go over and around Ridley Hill because there's a cove that comes in. We'll have to walk around that. Over on this side was called the Fairmont Plantation. And Broomfield Ridley, he acquired it through his wife. Shelton Crosswaite was one of the earlier landowners. He died in 1826. And so when Broomfield, Judge Broomfield Ridley, who was prominent, you know, Cumberland University, he married Rebecca Crosswaite, and he became the owner of this area. And over on the other side, this black lady was a slave for the Keeble family. And over on the other side, there's the Keeble family came here in about 1810, and their plantation was called Stony Lonesome. Stony Lonesome. And I was reading a thing at the Smyrna Library just recently, and they told about how many slaves they had, and it's very interesting stuff. Now we do have the Historical Society has a couple of books. If you come by the Ransom School on North Academy Street, or you can call up here. In fact, on a Saturday morning, they usually open. You've got a couple of books in there. I think they're both. I don't know if one of them is still in print. One tells about the history of old Jefferson right here, the history of old Jefferson, about 40 pages, and one tells about Jefferson Springs, which is a totally different place. It's a resort town, and I'll show them to you on my map. So this kind of gives you an idea. We'll be walking in. This is East Fork Recreation. We're close to where the bridge went across East Fork here and on to Walter Hill that way. Just to give you an idea, when you get into a place like this, you're like the lady there, she was stopped on the road with her hand up in the air saying, "I'm lost. Sam calls, where am I? Okay, where am I?" I mean, we get out 3 or 4 minutes out of civilization, and you know, it's kind of lonesome out here. You know, so I'll tell you where we are. Okay, if we kept going all the way through Jefferson, through the town of Jefferson, and kept going down to the bridge where it used to be, the Keeble plantation would be on the left, up down that little rise there. If you kept on going, that would be go over there, Young Subdivision, and it would tie in with Jefferson Pike. Jefferson Pike is over there. 840 is over that way. Oh, maybe I could just take my map here and just flip it over like this. Okay. Ow. Okay, hold this up right here, Joseph. If you would just hold this up right there. And okay, as you look at this map here, we're standing right about here. And these things here, this is the river. This is West Fork coming this way. This is Florence Road going this way. There was a ford right here. Now, I always call this Creech's Ford because the Creech family lived there, right there on this area. And there was a Creech cemetery, and she was part Native American. Okay, here's the center of town on this little rise right here. Now, back in the early days when I was younger, sometimes the river would get up. The river would get up, and of course the East Fork would come this way, West Fork coming this way, and Jefferson, this area right here, this ideal place to build a city, I mean, it was sitting on the hill, but it had water on too many sides. Okay, so the water would come down here and it would sweep in right, and it would go right around this way, and it would connect all together, and it would lead toward Jefferson. I was only there one time where we were going to a ball game in the springtime, high school tournament game in Murfreesborough, and when we got ready to leave, the river was up. And I had an aunt that lived there. She lived in 3 different places in Jefferson. One, she lived over here on this side one time. They came, knocked on her door one night, and said, "River's rising, pack up and leave." They took all they could, put it on top of the kitchen table, and she went up to town and stayed with somebody else. They came back the next day, and all of her, the water had creeped into the house, mud all over, of course, and all of her stuff was piled on top of the table. Okay, there was a pot sitting on the stove there. They always put a pot on get more in the house. That pot is one of the building in the house. Okay, and it happened. This happened, fairly often. when we had the big flood of 2010, of course it did go all the way around.
Did she finally find a place that wouldn't flood, or how did that work? Did she ever find a place that wouldn't flood, or was that?
Yeah, she finally did. She finally did. After 3 times living in Jefferson, she found it. Now this is 840 over here on this side. This right here is this is coming in on Florence Road, as I said. Here was the ford right here. Now this right here, there was a church sitting on here. There was a black church, and we used to come and you know, when we were kids, and sit outside. You know, when they have a revival, and the windows would all be open, and then, you know, the preaching would be going on, and we would sit and let the preachers. But this was the baptizing place down here. My aunt said they could come over here. They lived up here on Florence Road, so they come down here and watch the baptizing. And what that was a flat rock just like this, and you could drive your car across there. And then you could wash your car and everything right there. Here in the town here, docks and various kinds of loading devices were actually built along the water's edge right here, and then people could carry, you know, like cotton, corn, and their reports of, you know, they'd build a flat. Generally, this is what happened. Okay, this is Stones River. This is not the Mississippi. Okay, it usually runs downstream. You know, when people write, you know, that, you know, the flatboats were going up and down the river, up and down. It was usually downstream. It was, I mean, think about it. I grew up there, and you had to wait until the water got a certain level before you. And even still, it was dangerous. You can't wait too long. You can't wait till the water gets too high. But you get it just right, and you set out. And when you get over where you're going, they break the boat up, and you sell it for lumber and logs and stuff. Sometimes it didn't make it all the way to Mississippi. Going upstream was very difficult on a narrow stream like this. On other wider streams, it's different. Okay, this is Old Jefferson. Downstream about 1.5 miles this way was Sulphur Springs. We used to call it Sulphur Springs, and then they called it Jefferson Springs, and there's a Jefferson a boat dock over there with that same name as a recreation area, and that was kind of resort town back in the 1900s. This is early 1800s, roughly, and this is early 1900s. Two different places. Jefferson Springs. Okay, now. The road now, West Jefferson Pike, goes around here, and it comes back over, and comes right back over here beside Holly Grove, Hickory Grove area right over here. Okay. Now, you want to show us a little bit about the Native Indian? About a year ago, these gentlemen here, Pat Cummings and the other guy, Toy Heap. Toy Heap was with him, and they made this discovery that from the Trail of Tears normally, when you come over the mountain, this particular one, I saw in the paper the other day they were having, you know, something similar to this down in Fayetteville, where they were going to walk through the city.
Yeah, that's what Toy is today. They're doing a retracing of the trail through Fayetteville, through the route that traveled through that part of Tennessee.
And there are many of these.
The southern
law was passed originally in 1830, wasn't it? About
the Indian Removal Act was passed in 1830.
1830, but it wasn't until 1838 that the Indians started coming here. For our area here, Indians coming out of the east. Now my great-grandfather, he was his father was full-blood Indian, and he in turn married a full-blood Indian. And one of the children, one of the little babies that was left behind, was a place called where they'd actually leave little children who lost their parents. They'd get all the Indians together, and sometimes they'd hold them there for months, right? Months, disease and everything you could possibly think of. And by the time they left, you know, the numbers were, I mean, already, and along the way, there are people that they found some when they were building Nissan Boulevard, right there beside the Stewart's Creek. They were building that on-ramp there. They found some Indian graves, called the university down. It's an interesting situation, and so you just go ahead and tell us a little bit more about your aspect of it, then, Pat.
Glad to see everyone here. I corresponded with you just a few days ago via email, yes, through Amy, right? So it's nice to see you here. Thank you for coming. And welcome everybody. My name is Pat Cummins. I'm president of the Native History Association, one of the founders along with my son Joseph here. Joseph's a junior history major at MTSU. And my best friend, Toy Heap, who happens to be in Fayetteville, as I mentioned, he's also the other co-founder and vice president of the organization. organization in August of 2012 to really focus on the Native American history and heritage in and around the Nashville area, surrounding counties, because there's so much of it that's been lost over the years and so much that people are just completely unaware of here in the immediate vicinity. And one of our first focuses was to go through and document and identify sections of the Trail of Tears through Rutherford into Davidson County. A lot of people are unaware of the fact that there were two routes taken through Rutherford County. There was the primary northern land route that came from over in the Woodbury area through Reedyville, straight into Murfreesborough and up the old Nashville Pike. And that's the one most people are familiar with. However, at Reedyville, there was an alternate route that was started by 4 detachments of Cherokee. They totaled about 4,000 people. There had been a rider on behalf of the Cherokee Nation representing John Ross, the chief of the Cherokee Nation at the time. He had made it as far as Nashville with some of the first detachments to make it that far. He decided to turn around and head back to the Charleston, Tennessee area, which is now modern-day Cleveland, to report to John Ross on the progress of the Trail of Tears through Tennessee, you know, to let him know how far the detachments had gotten and how things were going, because the Cherokee were basically in charge of policing themselves. So Chief John Ross, being in charge, needed to know how they were progressing. So this rider, returning back from Nashville, ran into these 4 detachments at Reedyville, and he warned them, if you can help it at all, do not go through Murfreesborough, because you might be overcharged at the toll gates there. So it might be best to find a way around. So essentially what they did was they followed the East Fork of the Stones River all the way up into Jefferson. And being aware of this, we knew the alignment of the trail and this alternate route. It had already been previously identified, but there were certain sections of it we were unsure if there were any traces of it even left. And we know along the way there were certain portions that were likely destroyed. And such is the case with Old Jefferson here. I mean, locals have known for a long time that Old Jefferson was still above water, but the historians that have written about Old Jefferson since the creation of Percy Priest Lake, of course, all say, well, it's inundated by the waters of Percy Priest Lake and Old Jefferson is no more. There's nothing but a little pond or a little island out there. So for in the larger scope of things, that's what most people assumed, you know, aside from the locals that grew up out here and still knew that Old Jefferson was still around. Well, we started driving the trail, literally using Google Earth, virtually driving on the computer, retracing the route that's documented. And when Toy, the vice president, got to the Old Jefferson area, he expected, of course, to find it submerged under about 30 or 40 or 60 feet of water. But instead, he found it as it is today, and he was amazed to see that this section was still intact, and here it was on federal property, which means that it's protected, and the federal government has an obligation under the Federal Historic Trails Act to interpret it, preserve it, and help encourage people to come and learn about it. So he calls me on the phone one night looking at his computer, and he said, "You won't believe what I found." And I said, "What's that?" He said, "I found the old Jefferson town site. It still exists, which means our trail is still intact through there." And I said, "You can't be serious." And he said, "Oh, I'm looking at it right here." I said, "Well, I've got to go check it out." He wasn't feeling well. He had been fighting the flu or something for a couple of days, so he wasn't able to come with me, but I got up at 7 o'clock the next morning and made my way out here. I had no idea where I was going. I was on the cell phone with him.
Here's a picture showing the guys there.
And he literally guided me in using a cell phone, using various markers over by the picnic area and the picnic shelter and the restrooms. And he guided me in. He was my eye in the sky until he literally led me to the trailhead over here that starts, you know, the trail through Old Jefferson. And I made one last turn and turned to my left, and it just opened up in front of me, and I was absolutely astonished. The emotion ran through me. I literally just about dropped to my knees because I was so overwhelmed at what I was looking at. This was a portion of the Trail of Tears that no one had identified and had completely forgotten you know, almost 175 years ago. That was the last time any thought of the Trail of Tears coming through there had ever revisited. Yeah. And so that was quite an emotional experience for me. So we had took it on ourselves to find the number for the land use manager at Percy Priest Lake to see if they knew anything about it. The Corps of Engineers was completely oblivious that the trail was still surviving on their property. So we contacted the National Park Service to pursue certification for the site and signage. This is a pedestrian trail as well as being a horse trail, of course, and we want to get people out here to experience this as a hiking trail, not just a horse trail. And we want to have signs put up identifying the routes into Old Jefferson because people need to know. This is the 175th anniversary of the Trail of Tears, and this weekend marks the dates when the Cherokee were walking through here. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah. It was the last week of October, first week of November of 1838. Yeah. There were 4 detachments. They were led by Reverend Jesse Bushyhead, Reverend Evan Jones, a man by the name of Oldfield, and Moses Daniel. And like I said, there were just over 4,000 Cherokee in all of the detachments. Each detachment had about 1,000 people in it. And there would have been about 60 wagons in those 4 detachments. There were 1 wagon for every 15 people, yeah, in each detachment, approximately, right. So that's a lot of people, a lot of wagons, a lot of horses moving through this area, right. So this is the alternate route that I was talking about previously. Of course, we've identified the Old Jefferson area because this is where our sign plan. We would like to see it instituted sometime within this year, and the National Park Service is working on developing these pedestrian signs. But it comes through Old Jefferson, as you see, and it would work its way up Old Jefferson Pike to the present day location of the Smyrna Airfield over here. Basically followed the same route as the main drive into the airfield does today, skirting it here on the east side, crossing over the land use, or the Tennessee Wildlife Resource property, it's actually core property that's managed by the TWRA, over to Jones Mill Road, and it follows the route down Morningside Drive outside of Laverne, all the way over to Hollandale, making its way to the Four Corners Marina area at Hurricane Creek. And it goes, crosses there, cuts straight through the parking lot of the Four Corners Marina, out onto Hamilton Church Road, and follows Hamilton Church Road then all the way back, rejoining the main trail, or main route at Murfreesborough and Old Hamilton Church in Antioch by the Walmart. And then they would have turned north on Murfreesborough Road, heading back into Nashville from there. So that is the alternate route. Let me just insert this right here. After you had our meeting where you talked to the Historical Society, there were a couple of items of business, but we the Historical Society have one of our paperback books to sell for 50 cents. They used to sell for $5. Until much later, we'll go buy one, say as we hike in. But the thing that happened was, they had Jefferson Pike set up, and the Jefferson Pike actually was, back in the old days, it's called the Georgia Road or the St. Augustine Road. It ran from Milton all the way down and tied in with at the bridge at Laverne on the other side of the airport. It pretty well went east and west. Yeah, well, part of the federal road actually all the way to Georgia. There was a fraud of money. When you were going to build a whole road, this book is a whole thick book, and I read that just on and on. It said in this particular area there was a fraud where they actually the guys who set it up stole the money. So in this particular area going through here, it seemed at that particular time there were no toll gates at all. They actually don't, but at the other way there were plenty, and they could set them up every 5 miles. But they couldn't get any closer than a mile of a town. Okay, Pat? Okay. Now, there was one other thing, I'll say, on the handout that you had, toward the very end of the handout, the paragraph that ends, the last sentence, on the last page, it said that it connected
back with the, say it went over and connected where Jefferson Pike ends over on the Nashville Highway, rather than how you explained it going by
Well, that's incorrect. Because
it was just one sentence that was wrong toward the end.
Yeah, this is actually the route, and it never did connect over to the old Nashville Pike on this route.
Made the reference that it came straight over here.
Right. Yeah, but that's incorrect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they've actually documented this using old postal maps and other diary entries from some of the detachment leaders. So they've been able to retrace the route. Instead of going over there, it actually did wind its way up that way. Yeah.
Have there been any discussions about documentaries on this?
Oh yeah, there's lots of documentary videos and things on it already. But yeah, as far as here locally, we've discussed for trying to produce one ourselves.
That's what I'm talking
about. Right. Well, yeah, we're talking about trying to do that. We really would like to try to pursue it. It's one of the projects that our association is actually looking at. Of course, it takes a lot of money, so that's something that doesn't come easy these days, especially for a small nonprofit, right? Well, I've got these. Thank our National Park Service for producing these. These show the entire route all the way from the southeast all the way to Oklahoma. And I'm going to hand these out to you. These are yours to take with you. Give you a good idea of where the actual route segments are. And the wind's not cooperating, as you can see.
I'm trying to block it, so it's not working.
Right. Why don't you just take that one?
You could just leave those right there in the back of my truck and pick them up when they come back.
Yeah, I was going to say that if you wanted to do that. I've also got a